Okay. Now we're getting attendees.
It is Tuesday, May 24th, 2022 at 7 p.m. The regularly scheduled meeting of the Larkspur Planning Commission is now in session. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for being here. And could we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Chalmers.
Yeah.
Commissioner Swisher.
Here.
Chair Kunzler.
Here.
Commissioner Tauber.
Okay.
Wait, and Commissioner Wagstaff.
Yeah, thank you. I'm here.
Commissioner Tauber, but let the record show she is here.
I am here. I answered.
I didn't hear it.
Okay, and I see we do have some attendees with us this evening, so thanks to all of them for being here. We begin each meeting by inviting the public to comment on matters that are specifically not on the agenda.
Daniel, can I interrupt for a second? Can you get closer to your mic or something?
Sure.
Very soft.
I could also turn it up.
There you go. Thank you.
That's better.
Okay, at this point of the meeting, we invite the public to comment on matters that are specifically not on the agenda. So if there's anyone who wishes to make such a comment or address the commission on a matter not on the agenda, now would be the time to do so. And if you could please raise your hand. Digitally, that is.
I do not see any hands raised.
Neither do I, so I think we can move on to the planning director's report.
Good evening, Planning Commission. The City Council considered an appeal of the 39 Corte Toluca application on, I guess, last week, the 18th, and the council did grant the appeal and approved the project. And they were, I think they were very supportive of the second unit being proposed at that lower downslope area where it didn't have any impact on neighbors, and supported the design that was proposed. But that's all I have to report tonight.
Okay, well, we were overruled. It happens. Thank you very much, Elise. Okay, so we do have a brief consent calendar for the benefit of the members of the public who were there this evening. The consent calendar contains items which the staff has deemed to be particularly uncontroversial and likely to result in the commission actually making the findings that are proposed. So this evening we have just one such, and actually these items were voted on as a block with one vote by the commission. So this evening there is just this one item, which is a continuance. And if barring any objections from anybody, if somebody can propose a motion to accept the consent calendar, please.
I would move to accept the consent calendar.
Second it.
All in favor?
I thought this was being continued.
It is, but we have to consent to continue it.
Oh,
It was already publicly noticed and scheduled.
okay.
I'm doing this as a courtesy for the neighbors, largely, in case they tried to attend.
Okay, all in favor, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
None opposed. I don't think we need a roll call on this one. Okay, we can move on to the public hearing item, which is number 2138. And it relates to 47 Madrone Avenue in Larkspur. And if we could start with the staff report, please.
Thank you, Chair Kunzler. I want to make sure for the record that I announce that we've had 3 items of late mail. The last one that came in that I just forwarded was from Rick Adler, who objects to the tree removals. Another one was filed by Don Bumbach of 55 Madrone. Mr. Bumbach indicated he had prior engagement and could not attend tonight's meeting and really wanted you to get his email, which I forwarded a few days ago. And Susan Bartholomew sent in an email tonight at 4:30, and that was from 53 Madrone.
Yes, and I did.
And all of them are available on the city website under the pending applications for 47 Madrone. I've uploaded them all there too. So the subject site's a flat lot with a total land area of 19,384 square feet, and it's located in the historic Madrone Canyon neighborhood. The lot backs to the Larkspur Creek, and there are stands of heritage-sized redwood trees clustered in the roadway, fronting the site in the front yard and on the east side. Existing improvements include a 2,993 square foot historic residence centrally located on the lot, a detached garage in the rear yard, and a pool. The historic home was built circa 1890s and is listed in Larkspur's inventory of historic resources since 1979. In 75, when the architect first reviewed the project, he assigned it a 65 points on the NRHP scale and gave it a moderately high category B rating for the local inventory. In 2003, during our update, which was adopted in 2008, he increased the score to 75 points, which equates to a high B rating. It's almost to the point where it could go to A. Project plans are proposing to shift the residence forward on the lot 6 feet and to the west side 2 feet 6 inches, and to extensively demolish the rear portions, rebuild, remodel, and expand this home. Proposed floor area would increase to 5,584 square feet with a 0.29 FAR, where 4.0 is potentially permitted. New ground story second floor additions are proposed on both sides and at the rear of the home. The proposed 2-story addition at the east side is stepped back and separated by a breezeway on the ground floor, with only a 2nd-story hallway connection towards the back, so that the addition is separated from the east side elevation of the home. The historic architect had determined in initial reviews that the front and the east side were the primary elevations for this structure. Additions to the body of the structure would be located on the rear and west side and extending into the rear yard. The step back design for the new additions would permit continued views of the body of the historic front elevation and approximately 3/4 of the east side. Per the historic architect, at the front elevation and for the front porch on the east side, the historic siding, original windows, trim, dormers, roof form, etc. must remain in place, be preserved and rehabilitated. New exterior materials for the additions include vertical board and batten siding on the garage and 2nd-story master suite and 2nd-story connector hallway. On the original home where they're at making new additions, they would match the historic siding. Windows would be fiberglass clad dual pane windows. The fiberglass cladding allows for a narrower mutton, which better mimics a historic window that you would see with single family pane glass windows. The roof would be composition shingles, and the front porch would be restored, and the porch railing would be replaced with a more appropriate wood picket railing for the era of the original construction. Plans also include demolition of the existing detached garage in the rear yard, the demoing of the existing pool, and construction of a new pool shifted farther to the east, and a new 16-foot wide circular gravel driveway, which would run between the stands of redwood trees in the front yard. It should be noted, and I didn't address this in the staff report, that the new driveway cut will reduce on-street parking in pretty close proximity to Dark Park. We estimate, because it's at least an 18-foot wide curb cut, if not a little more, that we could lose 1 to 2 spaces just by the limited configuration that's in there now. At present, the application materials and arborist report, I'm sorry. I skipped on without really reading what I'm saying, sorry. As presented in the application materials and arborist report, there are 54 trees located on the site or around the site, representing 14 different species. The trees are located front, rear, and at 53 Madrone Avenue. The proposed project will require or include voluntary removal of 13 trees, of which 6 are heritage-sized trees. None of them are redwoods. 41 trees would be preserved. The project's been reviewed and evaluated by our historic architect, Ms. Jerry Holland, who attended the Heritage Board meeting. The Heritage Board heard this on May 9th, 2022. After taking all the information into account, including the neighborhood comments, They did move to recommend approval of the project, subject to a requirement that the city's historic architect review the final plans for railing post and trellis treatment details on the front porch to make sure they're architecturally appropriate. Additionally, the board did not support any modification to the northwest front corner of the historic structure as asked for by the architect, the property owner of 55 Madrone. But they have no objections to any proposed second-story alterations to the new additions. With regard to just the project approval and all the findings that are in the staff report, generally, staff notes the house will remain centrally located on the lot. It'll be provided with larger than standard setbacks to the ground story and second floor rooms. The height and massing of the proposed additions will be softened by the stands of redwood trees that are located in the front and side yard. And the additions are stepped back behind the historic residence, and the original design and character of the home can still be seen. The location and setbacks combined with the heavily wooded and shaded condition of the site appear to indicate and lead me to find that there would be no significant impacts on light, air, or views for surrounding properties, and that the home can remain compatible with the neighborhood. But we did note a little bit earlier that both 53 and 55 Madrone Avenue to the west have expressed concerns about the proposed improvements. The concerns focus on loss of privacy, loss of space between the structures, and the visual impact on the new bulk and massing, and also loss of light. Staff notes the setbacks to the ground floor remain larger than required at 7 to 14 feet, and the second story would be set back 21 feet where it's adjacent to 55 Madrone Avenue. The commission also should note that any solution to address the neighbors' concerns should not result in additional loss of historic material. This is not recommended by the board or the architect. If the commission determines the proposed massing of the design would significantly impact the neighbors at 53 and/or 55 Madrone Avenue, staff recommended in the report that you consider the following design modifications. Scale down the size of the second floor laundry room, which is detailed in Mr. Baumbach's letter, to reduce the massing. Remove the west-facing laundry room window to reduce his concerns for privacy, and require the applicant potentially require the applicant maintain the existing setback from the west side and not shift the house 2 foot 6 inches closer. With regard to proposed tree removals, the removals include 3 poplars ranging in size from 50 to 63 inches, 1 birch measuring 88 inches, 1 laurel measuring 113 inches, and 1 cottonwood measuring 100 inches. Generally, staff has no objection to the proposed tree removals. The topography is level and the tree removals will not adversely affect the topography of the land, cause significant erosion or flooding or change in water flow. The subject neighborhood is notable for being heavily wooded, and the removals won't have any significant impact on tree canopy. And so although there are no redwood trees proposed for removal, the initial arborist report did indicate that there could be some impacts due to the proposed design on all the redwood numbered 18 through 24, 36 through 38, and 51 through 53. After staff requested further investigation and reconsideration due to the potential impacts in that report, the architect redesigned the driveway to reduce compaction and propose gravel. He did not change the placement of the home. The second arborist then came in and determined that with these changes, subject to the care provided in his recommendations for tree care, the trees could survive with moderate impacts. One outlying concern that I think isn't really well addressed is the possibility that the rear additions could have some conflict over time with the redwoods located at 53 Madrone, and the commission should consider that in your deliberations. So generally, staff recommends approval of the proposed project. However, we did indicate that we recommend you consider possible impacts on the neighbors at 53 and 55 Madrone and determine if they rise to a level of significance that should result in some modification. And further, we asked you to consider the impacts potentially at 53 Madrone on the redwoods and determine if there should be any modification to give those trees a bit more room and try to ensure essentially there won't be any root intrusion on the new foundations that would result later in some request for tree removal. The last thing I'm adding on at the last minute is that you should consider that there will be some loss of on-street parking due to the second driveway cut that they're requesting. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Kristen. Are there any questions for Kristen from members of the commission?
Hey, Kristen, was there a possibility of modifying, did they discuss at all the possibility of modifying that driveway so it didn't involve a second cut? I mean, as I understand it's a circular driveway now, but is there a possibility of just not doing that, or was that discussed?
Well, yes, I mean, the architect and I briefly discussed possibility of not having it, but it seems to be a preferred design approach. They do have a driveway that goes back to the proposed garage with the turnaround. So the options for perhaps some more limited on-site parking between the trees closer to the existing driveway is certainly something you could consider.
Okay. Does the loss of a parking space require any specific action on the part of the commission, just for the record, aside from design review?
No.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions for Christian from members of the commission?
Yeah, I just have a clarification on the redwood trees. So maybe I misunderstood, but is the staff report saying that there will be some impact to the redwood trees, or are you saying that there is an arborist report that's saying that they have put in sufficient protections that there will not be an impact? And when you said there is, were you referring just to the ones at the back, or also affecting the clump of trees at the front too?
The initial arborist report identified the stands of trees in the front yard as being potentially impacted because the new driveway is crossing through their critical root zone.
Okay.
It also indicated some impact on the trees in the back at 53 Madrone. And I did bring this up in my comments, and they made some changes to the driveway design to reduce compaction, which is one of the worst things for a driveway in the critical root zone, is to compact all the soil around the roots. It's very damaging to them. So they've addressed it that way. They have not changed the design at the back near 53 Madrone. But the second arborist report indicated that, subject to their compliance with all their conditions and tree protection measures, that the trees should survive with moderate impact.
The trees at the back or the front?
I'm thinking the way it's worded, he means all of them.
All of them. Okay. Okay.
And just to clarify, by moderate impact, does that mean stinted growth, or does that mean that there's a threat to the viability of the tree?
I'm not sure his statement is that definitive. Let's see if we can find it. I have it.
I do not see anything in the arborist reports to that effect.
Right here. Let's see. I pasted his exact statement in here. I just have to find it. Here we go. 29 of the 41 trees to be preserved will survive the planned construction with negligible to minor impact. And then he goes on to say 12 of the trees to be preserved or in good to fair condition will survive the planned construction with impacts ranging from minor to moderate, depending on the care with which the work is performed. Greater intrusion is planned within the recommended tree protection zones in this group: 18 through 24 through 20, 24, 29, 30, 32 through 34, and 51 through 53. Plans show design strategies and material choices intended to mitigate potential construction impacts to these trees. Methods include the use of pier and grade beam foundations with gravel driveways and walks constructed with minimum base preparation and without heavy equipment, etc. So if everything is done like they're representing to the arborist, he thinks they can survive. But there are definitely impacts. He's not saying there aren't.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, maybe the applicant or the applicant's architect can also address that in their comments. Because moderate sometimes could mean 50%, like a 50-50. So that seems, I'd like,
Okay, okay. Thank you, Natasha. Do any of the other commissioners have questions for Kristen?
Just, Kristen, could you, I can't read the width of the driveway. Is that,
It should be 16 feet.
that's what I thought, but I wasn't sure if it was 18 feet, so.
The minimum permitted is 16 feet because fire trucks will access that driveway if it's there. So that was what they needed to use it.
And that does not have to go out at 16 feet?
I imagine it does. I don't know why it's narrowing. Fire accepted this plan, so I can't tell you.
Okay, that was what I was wondering about.
Or maybe we can ask the applicant that question as well.
I suspect the rest of the driveway is gonna have to be widened at the front there from what you see on this plan.
So we would, the potential of losing more parking is certainly there.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, any further questions for Kristen from the commission?
I have a question.
Yes, Laura.
I was trying to figure out, looking at the plans, and I read the write-up, but I'm assuming that the house needs to be shifted because of the addition in the back, mostly.
I would think so, but you should ask the architect that.
Okay, so that's a question, because I just really want to understand why the house had to be moved.
Now, I think we're all,
Okay.
the applicant will address that.
Yeah.
Okay, any further questions for Kristen? Okay, seeing no further questions, here perhaps we could ask the applicant or the applicant's representative to make their presentation if they so wish.
It looks like Mr. Hoot Cooper, the property owner, would like to speak.
Yeah, I see his hand raised, so yes, we'll go ahead and hear.
I am promoting him to panelist since he's the applicant or property owner. There
Okay,
you are. Mr. Hoot Cooper, you need to, there you go.
Hi, everyone.
thank you.
First of all, thank you very much for taking the time on this. My wife and I are home sick, so apologize if we don't have our normal enthusiasm that we would bring to promoting this project. But I'm also going to read here so I don't forget. This is important to us. My wife and I moved to Larkspur in 2003. We currently live on Piedmont and Magnolia. We built our house here in 2007. Our kids were baptized at St. Pat's. They went to preschool at Marin Primary. We have 3 daughters. One's at Neil Cummins in 5th grade. Another's at Hall in 8th grade. And we have a junior at Redwood High. My wife and I have been very involved in the community the entire time that we've lived here. Julie currently coaches volleyball. I've coached basketball, soccer, and softball. Thanks, Julie. And we've been involved in a number of things. This community is important to us. And we hope that by building this house, we'll be able to raise our kids here and our grandkids. And we're committed to California. We're here to stay. So for us, we weren't necessarily planning on moving. We walked by this house. We've been walking by it for decades. Walked by this house, saw the for sale sign, and we fell in love with it. We fell in love with the historic architecture of it aspect. We also fell in love with the backyard, which has lots of light. And it's a very interesting and unique site where you have the redwoods in the front, but a lot of light in the back. And that really was what attracted us to this project. I'd say one of the things that, we've worked really hard with the city and with the historic architect to come up with the design that preserved the existing architecture, but also allowed us to have what is important to us in this house. And one of the things that's important to us is being energy efficient. We really want a renewable energy system. We want airtight and well-insulated property. So it's a little bit about us, a little bit about this project. And thank you very much for allowing me to speak. Rob Wilkinson, who's our architect, he happened to also do our house at Piedmont, is going to talk next.
Thank you very much. So, yeah, I see Mr. Wilkins's hand is raised. And
Do we want to have Mr. Cooper stay on or go back to?
well, I guess that's kind of up to him. If we can, I think you could just stay on until Mr. Wilkinson has spoken.
Okay,
Okay, so
and Rob, I'm promoting you to a panelist.
there
There
we
we
go.
are.
Okay. So, Mr. Wilkinson, you have the floor.
Okay, good evening. My name is Rob Wilkinson. I'm with Wilkinson Architectural Group. Been practicing architecture in Marin County for over 30 years, and I've enjoyed doing many projects in the city of Larkspur during that time. I wanted to speak just a little bit about the design concept, and then hopefully address some of the questions that the commissioners have already raised as I do that. Just in general terms, obviously we made great efforts to respect the existing historic facade, the street elevation, by pulling any new massing back from the front of the current building and trying to separate the mass from the existing building where appropriate. And then we also made the effort to tuck much of the new additions on the back side of the existing house out of view as much as possible. And as Mr. Cooper mentioned, the backyard was a very important element in this the planning of this design. And we sort of approached the backyard as a redevelopment of the existing by maintaining a pool and surrounding that pool with new additions, but trying to reorient the pool so it related better to the house. And we do intend to provide privacy screening along both the east side and the south side of the property. Regarding the relocation of the existing house, the decision to move the house was based on three primary factors. Number one, the existing brick foundation had to be replaced. It's required structurally. And so we realized that the only way to do that is to lift the existing house so that the foundation can be demolished and a new foundation built. And when the new house is lifted, we will obviously have to move it back into place. So that created an opportunity, and our motivation there was to take full advantage and optimize the backyard space by moving the house forward into what we currently view as an enormous front yard. So, much greater than most houses on Madrone. So moving the house forward 6 feet, we felt like had minimal impact, and moving the house 2'6" to the west allowed us to gain some, maintain some space around the pool, and still maintain more than the required minimum setback on the west side. And as Kristen pointed out, our proposed second story is set back roughly nearly 20 feet from the property line, more than 3 times the required setback. And our lower level, we've maintained the footprint in its current form, and so shifting it to the west still provides 7 to 8 feet of setback on the side yard. So I wanted to speak a minute about the driveway. As Kristen mentioned, the fire marshal supported this design with the circular driveway. But the idea was to maintain the existing curb cut at the driveway that's existing, and we felt like that was important to do, but widen the driveway where we added the new offshoot from the current driveway. So that's the only portion of the driveway that's widened because it's new, and it does exit or enter at the other end of the circle. And so that's where fire trucks would be able to access if necessary. And that was something that the fire marshal felt like was a positive aspect of this plan. Let's see, I think in terms of neighbor concerns, you know, we obviously have heard concerns at the Heritage Board meeting, and the owners wanted to address those concerns and do what we could to mitigate that. So we were prepared to offer some mitigation proposals on the west side of the house. And I think, if you don't mind, I'll introduce a couple of those now. I have some more issues that I think important issues to discuss, but I wanted to put this out now as something to consider. So if you could show the ground floor, Kristen, the proposed ground floor plan, you'll see in the as at the front of the house, as it steps back towards the backyard along the west side, we maintain the footprint, no change there until you get all the way back to the pantry at the southwest corner of the new kitchen. That pantry is currently projecting out 3 feet from the existing west wall. After some deliberation, the owners are prepared to eliminate that projection, continue the west wall along its current configuration, and that would eliminate the closest point of the proposed building to the west property line and to the property owners at 55 and 53. So eliminating that proposed addition to the pantry, we feel like would address some of the concerns that have been raised by the neighbors with regards to the setback. We have also discussed the possibility of reducing the laundry room on the second floor. That was something that the neighbor at 55 suggested at the previous meeting. And so after consideration, we've decided that we'll propose to reduce that the point where the laundry room extends out beyond the bedroom wall by 1 foot, reduce the projection 1 foot so that we pick up another foot of setback, which would put it more like 21 foot from the property line to the face of that new laundry room. And then the other option here that we felt like might address some concerns is to eliminate the west window in the laundry room. The neighbor mentioned privacy and views into the rear yard, and we can certainly live with only 1 window in the laundry room, and so we're proposing to eliminate the window on the west wall of the laundry room. And we feel like those 3 mitigation attempts will hopefully address some of the concerns that the neighbors have raised. In terms of other design elements, I wanted to address the issue of the outdoor kitchen. You can see in this elevation where it extends on the west to the south beyond the existing house and beyond the second-story addition. At one point, we had extended the second floor over that space, and that entire area with where the outdoor kitchen is was 2-story. As we sort of looked at the impact that might have on the neighbor, that we came up with the concept of an outdoor living space instead of an enclosed indoor living space. And the idea being that that open structure minimizes the impact of the new massing. And then, of course, eliminating the second floor and using a relatively low roof line there, under 20 feet to the very peak there. We feel like provides obviously much more light and space for the neighbor there. So that was a design change that we made during our own process. Couple of other elements, as you can see on the south elevation as well as the north elevation, we've pulled the massing of the new garage addition and second floor master bedroom away from the existing house. The concept was basically to use the breezeway and a bridge is what we called this, to connect the two structures, but to keep them open and separate. And that was a design change that we made after input from the historic architect. And we feel like it was good input and a good change for the overall design, especially for the front elevation. So I think in general, we agree with Kristen's analysis of the design and of the project. And for the most part, with the comments by the historical architect as well. But we did take issue with two items that were part of the Heritage Board resolution and a requirement for approval by the historic architect. And those two elements are replacing the existing are retaining the existing windows on the north elevation, and then not removing any of the existing siding on the north elevation. Both of those are pretty problematic in terms of creating a new energy efficient, weather resistant structure. And we proposed originally that those windows would be replaced with new custom milled wood windows that would be designed and detailed to replicate the existing windows identically. And more than happy to let planning or the historic architect make the decision when we do that and include their input in the design of those windows. But we feel like trying to not remove the windows, not replace the windows. I've provided some photographs of where we have existing dry rot decay. We have doors that don't align, and it would be nearly impossible to get those elements to meet any kind of energy standard or even waterproof them without that. So there's one example. I think there's even a better one where we've got quite a bit of decay in existing windows, and it's clearly not a patch and paint type solution here, which is basically what the historic architect's recommending. We feel like the commission has set precedents in Larkspur for historic renovations, and many homes have had historic windows replaced. And probably the most notable example is City Hall, whose windows were replaced during renovation in the last few years. So I think what the owners here are requesting is that we be granted the same rights that the city has granted themselves in replacing windows in historic structure with a tasteful and exact replicate of the windows that exist now, which not only allows us to provide a better quality product on the front elevation, but also more energy efficient and more fire resistant. And that issue, in fact, was discussed directly with the fire marshal, who supports replacing these windows for that very reason. Untempered 1/8 inch glass offers almost no protection against fire or weather, moisture infiltration. So that's one area of concern. We're requesting the replacement of 10 windows out of like 40 windows in the house, or in the proposed house, but 10 windows on the front elevation is what we're requesting, that we be granted approval to replace those with exact replicas. And then the other issue that was required by the historic architect that is very problematic, in my opinion, is that none of the existing siding be removed from the front elevation. Problematic for a couple of reasons. One is that structurally, this building needs lateral bracing, and plywood sheathing is the standard way to achieve that. We understand that that is often done on the inside of the wall, and we are happy to do that where it's practical and possible. But the more important issue here is to renovate a house like this and not be able to ensure that there is a weather-resistant barrier and a moisture-resistant condition for siding as well as windows and doors. And if we're not allowed to remove any siding, we would be forced to basically leave the existing siding, which is applied over studs with probably little or no building paper, no protection against the elements, and no way really to waterproof from the inside. As you can imagine, siding nailed directly to studs, even if the building paper was once there, it's deteriorated after 100 years, and we have no way to access that space and provide a weather-resistant barrier. So what we had proposed originally to the historical architect is that we would remove the existing siding by hand as part of our demolition process, store it on site, and reinstall it on the new structure. We totally understand the attempt to maintain the look of the siding and even just the significance of having it be the original material. And with the fact that the back of the house and the most part of two sides of the house have siding that could be removed and used for the front elevation if there was damage to any of the boards as they were removed. So we envision having a stockpile of probably double the amount of siding we would need to replace every board or reinstall every board on the front elevation. So that we felt like was a very consistent approach to the Secretary of the Interior guidelines, where they do allow for siding to be removed and repaired and even replaced in the event of extreme decay. So our proposal here is that we do just that. We reuse all of the existing siding. We repair it where necessary, but we be allowed to remove and reinstall that siding so that we can ensure a weatherproof, weather-tight, moisture-resistant envelope that will also protect the siding in the long term and eliminate moisture infiltration that is unquestionably happening now. So those were a couple of items that we felt were very important that we would like the commission to weigh in on as it would change the recommendation from the Heritage Board. I think that addresses everything on my agenda, so I'd be happy to answer questions about any of these topics.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Wilkinson. And I'm going to first ask if there are any questions from my fellow commissioners for the applicant or for Mr. Wilkinson.
Yeah, I have just wanted to follow up on the question about the trees. If you could address your, I guess, confidence level on the preservation of the group of trees at the front and the ones, I think, the ones in the 50s on the side. I think actually in the neighboring property.
Yeah, thanks for asking that. I meant to address that. So that was an area that we worked really closely with the arborist, because he had a lot of concerns about the project as it related to that stand in the front, as well as on that west side of the southwest corner there. And the decision was made for a number of reasons, that because the foundation required replacement, that we would replace it not only with a pier and grade beam system, but we would use, and this was recommended by the soils engineer for its minimal invasiveness in root system, we would use helical piers, which are steel pipes with basically a big drill bit on the end of them. And the pipes are 4-inch diameter. So they have the ability to avoid roots just by adjusting the placement slightly in the field. And that system the arborist was very comfortable with that system as being something that he could support and be comfortable that there would be result in minimal or minor damage to any trees. And he also included in his report that he would be on site during the drilling process so that he could inspect and decide where, if and when a pier needed to be adjusted in its location to avoid damage to the trees. So that was the issue with the house and its new foundation, and how the arborist, how we resolved that with the arborist. And then the driveway issue was also a significant concern to him. And his concern was that almost invariably driveways require some excavation, even if it's minimal, like 4 to 6 inches. He felt like that was too much. And so we came up with the detail that's actually on our grading plan that shows that we would build our driveway above the existing grade, and we would do the most minimal amount of excavation, which would be that he was comfortable with, which was about 2 inches. And he felt like based on the location of the driveway and that minimal amount of excavation and building up our new driveway with gravel and the geotech grid, that we could avoid damage to those roots as well.
Was the civil plan separated from the architecture plan?
No, it's actually an A sheet. I think it's 1.2 maybe.
Yeah, you passed it, Kristen.
I'm used to getting them from civils. There we go.
That's the arborist.
You said 1.2.
Sorry, 1.3 maybe.
Here we go.
Yeah, 1.3.
Yeah, so that detail shows how we are sort of raising the gravel driveway above the current grade.
Sorry.
One other thing I wanted to mention while we're talking about the driveway, the other reason the driveway sort of where it originated in concept was that the owners have, even though we're proposing a small turnout, with several cars that may be parked in the driveway, it's very difficult to back out of this driveway and actually dangerous. And I've experienced it myself, where backing out between the redwoods and the other cars, you back right into oncoming traffic. So the circular driveway is also a safety feature. And with 3 young girls, one which is driving age, they really love the idea of having a safer way to get in and out of the property. And I also might add that the historical architect was complimentary of the driveway, and I think she felt like it was compatible with the historical elevation of of the house.
Thank you. Further questions from the commission?
I just do want to follow up on my question about the moving the house. I hear what you're saying about needing to jack it up and move it to replace the foundation, but partly to address some of the neighbors' questions about the closeness to them. Could you have put it basically back where it was, or where it is today, I guess?
There's
Well,
no reason zoning wise he couldn't.
yeah, not with the design that we have. And I also want to, I'd also like to point out, as you're looking at this survey, this is not only a topographic map, but this is a boundary survey that was prepared by David Harp, who's a local surveyor. And this boundary survey has actually been recorded. It's now a legal document in the recorder's office, the County of Marin. And you can see that the property line on the west side is significantly west of the current fence. And so, that also is one of the reasons that we felt like there's room for adjustment here. And we feel like, it's unfortunate that the setbacks on the neighboring properties are non-conforming and they're so close to the property line, less than 4 feet in my view, but it's not something that we feel like this property should be penalized for. And we sort of considered the fact that if this was not a historic house, it very likely would be torn down and rebuilt, and probably, if it was purchased by a developer, would be even larger and probably take full advantage of the required setback. So, the fact that we're beyond the required setback, we feel like is and stepping back the second floor is our attempt to address those setback concerns and the house location of the neighbor.
Anything further, Laura? Okay, I've got a couple of questions. Tree number 44 in the arborist report, it's shown as being in good condition, and that is the tree which is I guess it's if you look at the pool area, so the back of the pool area, it would be the tree that's facing the pool from the Baltimore Canyon side. It's in the arborist report, and it's in the arborist report. Clearly say that tree's in good condition. I was just wondering if it's absolutely indispensable to remove that particular tree. The other trees have problems. The other trees that have been slated for removal, but this one does not. So I was wondering if there's any way to preserve that one.
There you go. That would help. Can you point it out, Kristen, with your pointer?
I will. Oop, I left the tree one. I'm having trouble when I zoom in, keeping it from running off the page.
So there appears
It-
to be
It's kind of blurry. Here's 45. This
Yeah,
is
that's
44 right here.
where you've got the cursor. That's 44.
Yeah.
And that tree is noted to be in good condition. And I was wondering if there's any way to preserve that tree.
Well, that's all. I think there are roughly 5 trees along that southern property line there. They're all poplars, and I believe that one is as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, but the other poplars are not as
All 4 of these.
shape.
I think.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
The other poplars are not in particularly good shape, particularly good condition, but that one is. That one's the exception, according to the arborist report.
Well, our thinking here is that we want to replace this entire line of trees with new screen trees that would provide even better privacy for the neighbors as well as the owners. And, this tree could, I think the arborists felt like the reason for removing this tree is, one, it's part of these poplars that aren't particularly desirable for, the neighborhood in general, and that it would be susceptible to damage by the new pool and the paving. So it would be, our feeling, and I believe the arborists agreed that, it would be overly penal to say we should keep that one tree and redesign around it.
Okay, but you are proposing to replace those trees with a native species?
Absolutely.
Okay. My other question had to do with the roof. When I was reading the historic architect's report and comments at the meeting, she did seem quite concerned about. She wasn't objecting to your roof, but she was concerned that the roof be consistent with the historic character of the house. And I assume that you've addressed that. At the same time, I was at the property again today and saw that there's a passive solar system on the roof right now, which I suppose is used to heat the pool, or at some point was. Will that be replaced with photovoltaics for the house, or what's your intention there?
Yeah, we would like to replace it with new photovoltaic on the south side of the new roof.
Okay, was that discussed, or was there any objection to your doing that on the part of the historic architect?
No, there's essentially the historic architect had no real concern of anything on the south side of the existing ridge line.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to move on to the public unless any.
Wait,
Yeah,
Dan-
that's fine.
Daniel.
Sorry, go ahead, please.
I did have a quick question or two. The new windows that you're proposing to replace the ones that are in need of replacing, are they going to be single pane or double pane?
We would like them to be double pane. We would like them to be as energy efficient as possible.
I would too. But I have personally run into this with buildings I've done where we were required to do single pane, and I didn't know whether you've been required to do that or not. Because in this day and age, single pane really doesn't make a lot of sense. And I don't know whether you approached that or whether you had an answer.
The historic architect asked that they retain the original front windows and repair and replace material that's damaged, not take them out and replace them entirely. Just on the front.
Do we have, is the planning commission, do we have the ability to change that, or is that set in stone?
Well, this is the city's historic program. You just have to tread carefully, because at what point, if everything on this building comes apart, do we still have a historic structure? Look at the roof elevation, the roof plan here, just to get an idea of what's left.
No, I agree with that, but, and I think retaining the siding, if you can, makes sense. I presume you're matching the siding on the rest of the building?
Mhm.
Yes.
So you're having it milled to match?
Well, if we do need it to be milled, as I mentioned earlier, we would, for instance, the entire back south elevation, that there's a large wall existing now that's 80% siding, which all could be reused.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the issue of whether or not we can remove it and then reuse it in its same state with just whatever repairs and repainting would be done regardless. But as I mentioned, removing it gives us so many opportunities to create an energy efficient, weather resistant envelope.
Yes, I understand. And the other question I had is just simply, which came up when we were talking about the tree, which is the direction of the pool. And that's really up to you, but I'm wondering why it is sort of aimed. Is there something out that way that it doesn't, wouldn't go, you can't see my finger, but the other direction.
Like that?
Yeah, but with the new structure.
Yeah, to be honest, we looked at both orientations, and there are sort of pros and cons to both, but you can see that we have a basketball hoop called out on the east side of that patio below the pool.
Okay.
So we sort of like the idea of having some extra space on that side.
It's totally up to you. I was just curious more than anything else.
Okay.
And then one last question. I think the laundry room could certainly be reduced, and there is a hip that comes in that if you pulled that wall back to where the hip hits the corner and eliminated that window, I think it would help out the neighbor. It would reduce the sort of the form that seems to be pretty large on that side.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, before I move on, I want to triple check to see if anyone else on the commission has a question for the architect or the applicant.
No, actually, I have a question. This may not be the right place to ask it, but I'll ask it anyway. And I have a comment in my notes here that there was we need a follow-up from architect Colin's review of railings, post and trellis treatment of the front porch.
Mhm.
And apparently that was still outstanding. Do we know if that got closed out?
It's not. It would be a building permit level of review where they really provide us with the fine details on how that will be done.
Okay, so how would that fit into today? Do we need to address that in any way, or
I think it's a condition of
handle?
approval.
Okay, if it's a conditional approval, it sounds like that will get picked up there. But if we need to include that, just let us know.
Let me make sure I included it. There's a lot here.
Yes.
I think I might.
13
Okay.
and 14 and 15. Yeah,
You found it?
I think it's numbers 13 through 15.
It's not specifically saying that she has to review the, we should make sure that we add that as a condition, that specifically says she has to review and approve the details for the historic porch.
Okay, we can add that as a condition of approval or
Okay.
conditions of approval.
Okay.
Okay, I'll try again. Anybody else wish to ask anything of Mr. Wilkinson or the applicant? Okay, now I'm going to take the risk of moving on then to see if there's anyone in the public that wishes to address the commission on this application. I see two hands raised. I'll start with Susan Bartholomew. Your hand's raised. If you could unmute yourself.
Hi, I'm the property owner at 53 Madrone. And first of all, I want to say we generally think that this plan for 47 has been well thought out. However, I do have a couple of things that I would like to bring up. We bought our property in 1990, and it's a single-story property. It originally was an old camping cabin, and the interior is still there, and it was added onto over the years by the owner that we bought it from. Since we bought our house, pretty much every house around us has gone up 2 stories. So we are, we want to preserve our light, at least coming from the east side of our house. If the property is moved 6 feet forward on the lot right now, as it stands, it will definitely impact 55 Madrone a lot more than it will impact us. Where the story pole is showing up right now, it kind of sits behind our house for the end of the second story. So yeah, bulk is kind of an issue, but definitely it's going to impact 55 a lot more than it is us. One question I had was, if you look at the east side of 47 Madrone, there's a bump out on the side of the garage, and I believe it's a closet upstairs. And I'm wondering if there's a way just to shave something off of that, because it's not a historic part of the property, to just keep the west side wall where they are. So I don't know if there's a reason for that or not, but that was just kind of one suggestion. The second thing that is kind of an issue for us is the outdoor dining area. The story pole at the peak of the roof shows it's 19 feet 4 inches. That is quite a bit higher than our house, and I'm wondering if that peak can be lowered, because that's going to sit right. It parallels our master bedroom right now. That's that whole structure. But yeah, I look at that story pole and it's like it's towering above us. So I'm just wondering if that can be lowered, so that it's not so much in our face in terms of our property. Ours is an old property. It's not very high. But so that's the second issue. The third issue is the pool equipment. I'm not quite sure where it's sitting, why it's being moved to where it is. Number one, it sits right behind their outdoor dining area, and it looks to me like it's an 8 foot by 8 foot structure. And also it's kind of pretty close to our redwoods, which after the discussion earlier is kind of concerned me a little bit, but I'm because they're healthy right now. We just had our arborist out to look at them, and they are healthy right now. But I'm wondering if that pool pump structure could be moved closer to the bridge across the creek. I mean, right now it sits right on the creek, right in the corner. But that seems kind of like a strange place to sit it, right in the middle of that area where it could be moved somewhere else. Plus, it would be closer to the pool if you moved it over to the creek. Then you could probably, put some bushes or something around it so nobody would see it. So anyway, that's the concerns that we mainly have.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And I think we're going to move on to the next member of the public on the phone. I believe it's Mr. Holmes. And if you could unmute yourself. You're muted. There we go.
James Holmes, Larkspur. My major concern is the loss of 1 to 2 parking spaces due to a second curb cut for the driveway in an area of tremendous parking shortage. Currently, there are 3 full parking spaces in front of 47 Madrone as you face the house. 1 to the left of the redwood cluster and 2 to the right, and all of them are in continuous use. This second driveway curb would wipe out at least 1 and probably both of those spaces if it's 18 feet to the right. Parking is at a tremendous premium on the first block of Madrone. You have parkers, you have park user, Dolliver Park users, you have restaurant users, you have lots of workmen, in addition to a neighborhood on-street parking. Basically, this is adjacent to the historic downtown. Just today, as it happens, this is my errand day, and I passed 47 Madrone 6 times, 3 times down and 3 times back. And each and every time, all 3 parking places were fully occupied. In addition to illegal parking on the other side of the very narrow street, further indicating the inadequacy of the legal parking. To allow a second wide curb cut that abolishes 1 to 2 spaces would be an unreasonable grant of special privilege. No one else in the area, and indeed anywhere else on Madrone, to my knowledge, has 2 curb cuts, let alone a wide one. A couple of driveways in the area have a wide driveway, but a single wide driveway, but they were put in decades ago before parking became a real problem. The Madrone roadway is already very narrow and lacks much legal parking due to all the redwood trees and the red curbs. The city used to disallow multiple curb cuts completely, and that policy should be followed here. There is no evidence that the Public Works took this problem into account, and they probably just missed it. However, when the road was repaved and restriped several years ago, the Public Works were at pains to preserve every parking space, and to remove any parking spaces would be contrary to that policy. This was not a requirement of the fire marshal. They said it was okay, but the fire marshal didn't take into account the big picture and the urgent need to have parking for this wide range of people who currently use it. Please don't allow this unprecedented preemption of public parking in an area of major shortage of parking adjacent to a public park and the historic downtown. It also occurs to me, just another point, I was a little bit worried to hear that, they put it, 12 of the trees would have impacts, quote, depending on the care with which the work is performed, unquote. That's a pretty depending, considering the exigencies of construction, and it would be a lot better to have a design solution, design protection than a performance protection. But in any event, please do not take away the public parking to allow this to be a bad situation to be made worse. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Holmes. Might I ask Mr. Wilkinson or Mr. Hoot Cooper to clarify what the conversations were with the fire marshal, whether this design was something that they actually advocated for in terms of fire safety and ingress and egress?
I think it would be best to get that information directly through staff from the fire marshal, so there's no misinterpretation of secondhand or hearsay.
Okay.
I was not personally told that they insisted on a driveway in any form. They're dealing with the application as it was proposed.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I do see Mr. Wilkinson's hand is raised. However, before I call on him again, I'm going to ask Mr. Adler if he would care to address the commission.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to speak for the trees, and I'll just read what I wrote. And I write to each one of you regarding the proposed removal, which is an aphorism for killing, of the 6 heritage trees, because the trees are our best and currently only method to remove CO2, carbon dioxide, from the atmosphere to slow and reverse the many catastrophic disasters of global warming climate change. I hope and wish that the people of Larkspur planning are the kind that would require that every heritage-sized tree killed or removed be replaced by planting 4 fire-safe, fire-survivable native trees like redwood, oak, etc., in a different location on the property if possible, or somewhere appropriate in Larkspur along the bike paths, streets, parks, creeks, schools, or even in the watershed. 4 trees are necessary to begin to match the amount of CO2 every heritage-sized tree captures every year. And because not all newly planted trees survive. I hope and wish that the applicants would volunteer to pay to plant and maintain 4 replacement trees for every one removed. The cost of the replacement trees would be minuscule compared to the cost of the proposed extensive project. I hope and wish that you all will take this opportunity to be among the first and best climate heroes and leaders to set the example for others to follow. I hope and wish that if you must kill the trees, that you hire a tree company that will mill the fallen trees into useful lumber, maybe used in your remodeling, instead of just chipping them to wasted bits. Yes, there are tree companies that can and will turn the fallen trees into useful lumber, which is in very short supply and expensive these days. I hope and wish to be positively surprised. I also hope and wish that the Planning Commission and other people hoping to remodel would look upon the trees as magnificent living beings that unselfishly give us oxygen and suck in our carbon dioxide from our cars and provide homes for numerous birds and squirrels and other wildlife, provide food for them, not just as big, messy sticks that need to be clear cut for progress. The American white man way of looking at trees. I hope that you could take a look at them as spiritual living beings, not just dead sticks, messy sticks. So I hope you will pleasantly surprise me and pioneer a new method of dealing with what you consider necessary removal of the heritage trees by replacing them into places that they'll be much appreciated and provide us use for the wildlife and for removing the CO2 from this atmosphere, because the climate change is killing us. And if we don't get a hold of the climate change, all these hills and trees in Larkspur are going to be caught up in wildfires. So I thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adler. Okay, I see that Mr. Wilkinson's hand is raised, so I'm going to invite him to speak. Perhaps there's some issues that were raised that he wishes to address. Mr. Wilkinson, are you on?
Mr. Chairman, I think it said it directed me to unmute, so maybe my hand was mistaken for somebody else's.
No.
I think that might be it. I'm gonna.
Yeah, there we go. I see Mr. Wilkinson's hand is raised still. Okay, here we go. You're on mute though. There we go.
Okay. Yes. Let me start with Mr. Adler's comments. We certainly appreciate those comments and agree, and we're happy to replace the 6 trees. I'm not sure we can find room for 24 trees, new trees, but would certainly be comfortable, I would say, with 12 new trees to replace the 6 removed. And we will propose a couple of species, but we're happy to take input on that as well. in regards to the driveway issue, yeah, my comment was that the fire marshal supported the new design and did point out advantages of it, but certainly did not require it. However, I also want to point out that the current street traffic that I'm sure was experienced by the previous speaker is largely due to the construction traffic that's parked for the house directly east of 47 Madrone. And they've been taking up most of the spaces between 55 and 45 for some time. So it's not a fair representation, but I think we'll certainly lose one space of one parking space for the new curb cut. But will probably be a wash because at least one of the cars for the owners of 47 will be, possibly parked on the street if that that circular driveway is not approved. So, it's something that it's not critical to the design, and we could modify it, but there are a lot of reasons that it makes sense, and safety is one of them.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I do not see any other hands that are raised, although I see Mr. Holmes's hand was raised again, but he just took it down. So I am, oh no, you just put it back up again. Mr. Holmes, you care to speak some more? You're on mute. You'll have to unmute yourself, James. There we
Yes,
go.
Yes, James Holmes. Just to correct the statement that was previously made. It is true that the workmen are, at the other house are adding to the problem, but I can assure you, based on decades of observation and experience, that if those workmen were not there, then it would be park users and restaurant users and neighbor parkers or visitors. So that what is happening now is simply the workers are displacing other people, but the parking spaces are still needed by the other users. And this should not be a case of ousting the public for private advantage. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I do not.
Chair Kunstler, would you mind if I just address a few things since so much has been talked about?
I would love it if you did.
I just want to point out that the driveway has a turnout, and I don't believe it's necessary, if they design this properly, that they have to back out of the driveway. But I can't guarantee people won't, of course. We did require the turnout for the sole purpose of trying to make sure they could exit forward. That's okay. I have a few little notes here. I like James Holmes' notion about permissive, about not requiring conditions that and performance to meet the standards for historic preservation. It's very difficult to ensure that when they remove things like siding that's already in quite good shape right now, and I mean, windows are, I think I understand why the commission would be open to windows being removed, but the siding in particular and other historic details, if they take them all off, there will be some loss to that siding. It'll be damaged in the process. It's really difficult to say if they'll have enough to put it back on properly, or if they'll even reuse it at all, because it's going to be so difficult for staff to be around enough to ensure that this kind of level of detail and programming is met. So in the interest of historic preservation, the historic architect and the Heritage Board had recommended the siding be retained. The windows as well, but I'm going to leave that subject up for you all to discuss. I know there's already some concern about energy efficiency. With regard to doing shear wall with historic homes, it's quite common. You put the shear wall on the inside instead of the outside. So that is really not a problem. They're gutting this house. With regard to waterproofing, there are methods that they can do from the inside as well. They're not quite as good, but they do work. The historic architect was quite adamant on that with the Heritage Board. So I'm just relaying this information because I think it's important in the final decision about what you allow in terms of the alterations of the historic structure. With regard to trees, clearly separation is the best practice for preservation. Then, like James was mentioning, kind of performance-based improvements. So just keep that in mind. But of course, performance-based can be accomplished if we can ensure the foundation work is done the exact way that the arborist recommends, then it will probably work. I think that's it. I just had to kind of, I'm being the historic planner, I feel like I have to represent for them since we do not have anybody present tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kristen, for doing that. Okay. I see no further hands raised. So with that, I'm going to go ahead cautiously and close the public meeting and bring it back to my fellow commissions for our deliberations. And I'm going to start with Brock.
I'm unmuting myself.
Great idea.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, this is a really, really big house with a lot of big spaces that if you look at the plans, it's kind of hard to understand why some of them are necessary. On the other hand, I feel like that's the decision of the people that own the property and their architect. I tend to agree with Kristen and the Historic Preservation Board that if you are going to adhere to that, you need to leave the siding in place. I just don't think you can pull it off. That's probably redwood. The nails will pull through. It's not in their old nails and it's really hard to do. So if you're going to adhere to that, then I think it just has to be left in place and it has to be waterproof from the inside. That's the big issue, in my opinion, is that often these old houses didn't have any tar paper or anything between the siding and the stud space. I also think that, and again, on a personal level, you wouldn't be able to tell if you replaced the siding with siding that was milled to the exact dimensions, you would never know. And that's another topic, but it does make it difficult for people to effectively remodel old houses. Having said that, I think they can figure it out. So I would go with that. And I think that respecting the neighbor who asked that the laundry room be reduced, I don't know if we can put that as a condition of approval or have it be brought back to staff for review. But I think that's a huge laundry room. You could play basketball in there and you could reduce that and eliminate the window, and it would still be a big laundry room. So I think they've done a pretty nice job of retaining the historic front facade. I think that the driveway could work without it being a circular drive and save a couple parking spots. And I think that if we can mandate that, or at least suggest that we should. So those are my thoughts for now.
Thank you, Brock. Jeff.
All right. Well, I share some of Brock's opinions. It's an interesting thing about historic houses. I mean, it's interesting as a doctor. I look at people, and if you look at a person, there is literally not a single molecule in their body that has not been changed over the course of a lifetime, right? Everybody is recycled, et cetera. So I think the point is that you preserve the look I'm not an expert on historic, and I understand why Kristen is speaking for that, but it would seem that, modern materials and, like, for instance, cementitious or, milled, new stuff would be preferable here, and it would, make the house energy efficient, which I think is also important. So I see no problem in replacing the windows with modern windows. Having tried to replace siding and put it back on a house, I agree with Brock. It's impossible to do that because we have a house that had redwood siding as well. And putting it back on, which we tried to do, was very difficult. Now, my house isn't a historic house, so I can't speak to that. But I think that, you want to preserve the integrity of the existing structure. So I have no problem with replacing the windows and maybe try to do the redwood siding and put it back. I think the driveway is the most problematic issue. And having lived on Madrone for several years, I think that I just can't see going ahead with the approval for a second cut into that area because it's right near Dolliver Park. And I agree the parking is ridiculous. And I'm all in favor of replacing the trees. Poplars are not redwoods, and some trees, I hate to say it, are more equal than others. And I do really appreciate the gentleman who spoke speaking for the trees. But I think that if they're replaced, that would be adequate. I don't really have an opinion about the other issues. Ms. Bartholomew talked about the pool house, and if it's a possibility to move the pool house into the pump house into a different area, which would mitigate some of her concerns, I think I would be in favor of that as well. I think that is it.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Natasha.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, there was a lot to unpack in this one. So my thoughts, I guess starting with the tree removal, heritage tree removal, I did want to thank Mr. Adler for his really thoughtful comments. I'm glad he spoke. I'm glad though that the applicant will be replacing trees. I think they clearly stated that here on the call, that along the back of the property, the ones they're taking down, they're putting in, I think he said, at least 6 trees. So if we can reference that, I'm pleased. And it was good to hear the efforts that they're making to preserve the redwoods and having the arborist on site during the work that's going to be done. So thank you for that. On design review, I'm not sure anyone's actually said this yet, but I think this is a very, very beautiful design. And I think they've done a really good job of preserving a lot of the character of the property, and it's very appropriate for the neighborhood. So the additions, I think, are mostly to the back and the side, so are not visible for the street. So I have no really issues with the design review, and I can make the findings on that without too much trouble. The historic, on the historic review, that's somewhat more problematic, and I have less experience on that. Again, I think the architects have done a really good job of preserving the character of the property. I agree with Jeff on the windows. I don't see why, if they're going to do this much work to a property and you want to bring it up to date and you want to do a lot of energy saving work, if you can replicate the windows that you already have, whether it's made of new material, I think from my perspective, and that may go against what the Heritage Board is trying to do, but from my perspective, it's going to look the same. And I believe I heard the architects say they were planning to do an identical replication of the windows. I could say the same thing on the siding, but I think I'm going to leave that to my fellow commissioners to comment on, who have sort of more experience on that. And then I just want to acknowledge also that the comments from the neighbors, I think they did have valid concerns. They, I know the letter that came, there was a letter from the neighbor at 55, and also Susan Bartholomew spoke from number 53. Appreciate the efforts to reduce the laundry room, and I agree with Brock, if we can make that a condition of approval, I think that would be a good step forward here. And there's a lot to say on this one. I'm not really sure if we need to address right now on the call Ms. Bartholomew's comments, or whether that's something that the applicant can think about. I know they talked about moving the pool pump and lowering the dining area, bringing that down a little bit. From my perspective, I didn't have a particular issue with it, but if that's something that they can take into account to keep good neighborly relations, I think that's always worth doing. I think that's it. I think I covered everything. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Natasha. Laura, you've been waiting.
Well, I would sort of echo what most other people have said. I think my biggest concerns about this were the neighbors' comments at 53 and 55. In general, I think the design is a nice one and is very sensitive to maintaining the character of the house and the historic value of the house. Like some other commissioners, I kind of feel, I understand from a historic standpoint why you would want to keep original materials, but I also feel like it needs to be a livable house. And, you know, having double pane windows makes sense to me from a energy conservation standpoint, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess I don't really have a problem with the windows. As I started to say, my biggest concern really was the neighbors. And so maybe part of it is reducing the size of the laundry room, maybe moving the, you know, the pool equipment makes sense to me. If it seems like that should be doable. I'm not as sure about reducing the height of the, I think it's the porch. But it seems like at least like the other two should be doable. In terms of the, and I think, you know, from I read the arborist reports, I did go look at the property. I think there's been a lot of thoughtful consideration of the trees and protecting them and only removing the ones that they need to remove. So that makes sense to me as well. I'm less sure about the circular driveway. Even before the concern came up about the cut, which makes it even more concerning. It feels to me like if there's enough room to turn around a car, you probably don't need to have all that driveway and the second cut. So I could probably make the findings for most of the things, but I would, for me, it would be a condition of approval to not have that second cut and reduce all the driveway.
Okay, thank you very much. I guess that leaves me to, you know, also sort of echo the bits and pieces which I heard from my fellow commissioner. Let me start with the historic part. I agree with my fellow commissioners about the windows, that it just it would appear to be a bit foolhardy to try to reuse those windows and not achieve the energy conservation objectives that we all share as a community. So yes, if we can get exact replicas of the windows in using more modern isolation technology, I think that would be preferable than trying to patch windows which are bound to fail in the future. I just don't think that would be an appropriate thing. With regard to the siding, I think I'm going to join Brock and defer to his experience with these kinds of situations where there is a possibility of preserving the siding and insulating the house from the inside. From what I understand, that's something which is reasonably. I'm sure it isn't easy, but it's probably reasonably customary. So if that could be done, I think that that would be, in fact, the preferable way to go, especially since those materials, as Brock has pointed out, would probably be damaged upon removal. Um, so we would preserve, yeah, obviously preserve resources, preserve the historical materials by working from the inside. Um, with regard to the trees, I'm in vehement agreement with everybody else. I mean, the applicant, the applicant's representative, Mr. Wilkinson, in fact, did propose kind of a 2-for-1 equation. So remove 6 trees and plant 12. He believes that's feasible. So you know, I kind of like to hold the applicant to that if we could, and that would you know, that would certainly address some of the concerns that were raised by Mr. Adler that we also all share. Um, with regard to design, yes, I think the applicant is making an effort to accommodate the neighbor at 55 by reducing the size of a laundry room, which I agree is not entirely necessary for it to be quite that large. The setbacks, I think, though, are pretty adequate. Now, this is a very, very ambitious project. I think there's no denying that. And in terms of design and accommodating the historic nature of the base property, that a tremendous amount of effort has gone into it. And I think we can all be thankful for that. There are a couple of other elements. I would like to see, in deference to the resident 53, if that peak of that outdoor kitchen area could be lowered, even if it's just by a foot. I think that might go a long way to addressing those concerns without really changing the nature of the overall design, if that were possible. And also, I agree with Commissioner Chalmers that the pump station, you know, might benefit from being moved moved to the east and to the east and a little bit to the south, and closer to the pool, if that could be accomplished as well. And then finally, with regard to the driveway, as I've told many of you, sometimes I get a little bit frustrated with this idea that parking is the tail that wags the dog. But there is an issue, and it's absolutely legitimate to raise it. So to the extent that that second cut is not needed, is not essential, particularly for safety reasons, then I would advocate limiting it to a single cut in the toward the roadway. So those are my comments. So it's going to be a little bit challenging to draft a motion. And I'd like to hear what everybody else thinks, but I'm sort of wondering, even though we're certainly trending toward making the findings in general, and that there are no fundamental objections to the design of the house or the scope of the project. If it might be advisable to actually do a continuance in order to allow the applicant to simply fine tune this, and then bring it back to the commission fairly promptly. I don't know my other, I'm not going to say that I advocate that or not. I'd just like to hear what everybody else thinks. Especially since it might require other drawings in order to show the modifications to the laundry room, and perhaps the modifications to the roof line of the outdoor dining area, and the pump station, and also the design of the driveway.
If we did a continuance, how long would that actually delay the project for? Maybe it's a question for Kristen.
It might be a question for for Mr. Wilkinson.
That's true.
A priori, I wouldn't think it would be that long, because I think while the changes that we're suggesting, that all of you have suggested, are meaningful, they're material. They're not major in terms of the design effort that it would entail. It's not like going back and sort of redesigning the whole house or anything like that. But who am I to say? But we'll ask Mr. Wilkinson in a moment, but I'd like to hear from everybody else first.
Daniel, I have a question. So, and this is for Kristen, I guess, but I mean, I think most of us are in agreement that the window issue, it seems crazy to use the existing windows, but do we have the authority as a planning commission to say, no, you can use modern windows? I mean, who has that ultimate authority to say that? Can we
Well, I think that from and Kristen, correct me if I'm wrong, that the historic commission, they then basically bounce their conclusions to us with their recommendation. But then we do have a final, the penultimate, responsibility of approving or not approving the project. Of course, in the event of denial, then the applicant can then appeal to the city council.
is that true? Is that correct, Kristen? I mean, is that true?
The Heritage Preservation Board is a recommending body. The real expert in this situation is our historic architect who works in this field and is an architect herself. They are following the logic of their discussion with her. So they've made you a recommendation, and the city's Heritage Preservation Board is ultimately enforced by the city hearing body. So you have to make a determination that the historic preservation is meeting our guidelines and our intention, even though the windows are changing.
Yeah, and there's an inherent sort of conflict between two objectives that the city has. One objective is energy conservation. The other objective is historical preservation. So we sort of have to, it's up to us to kind of resolve that. And to the extent that the applicant is proposing a plan which includes a replacement of those windows with exact replicas, we can either approve that or not approve it. That's incumbent upon us, to make that call.
If you do make that call, I'd recommend that you have the final window design and selection be approved by the historic architect.
Okay, with that,
along with the porch details.
Yeah, I think that also might argue for for a continuance to allow the applicant to to address this. I mean, this is a very ambitious project, so it's not. I don't think it's particularly uncommon that something like this would occur where we do need, even though we're sympathetic to the design and sympathetic to the project overall, there's some modifications that need to be made, and we need to see them before we actually issue a stamp of approval. I mean, that's my view. I mean, I'm not a dictator. You guys can disagree.
I would like to see a design that didn't have the second road cut.
Right, me too. Yeah, I agree with that.
So I agree with you. I would vote for continuance.
Okay.
I think that's probably the right approach. And I think to ask Jerry, if I think those windows would be very, very difficult to save. They'd basically be new windows with old glass. And you wouldn't be able to tell the difference when you walk by that house if you had windows completely built. So again, it's a question of where the historic runs into the reality of living in a place.
Yeah,
I totally agree. I mean, I think it's insane to take that. I mean, I'm going to use a medical analogy again, but when we take your knee out, Brock, we're not putting back your cartilage in there again, right? We're using titanium.
I want to talk to you about that.
All right, anytime. You can just give me a call. But I mean, it's just nuts because it seems to be the point of historic preservation is to, do two things. One is to maintain the integrity and the look, but modern materials are used in restorations of old art. It just seems nuts to me that both the siding and the windows shouldn't be used with modern materials and techniques.
Well, particularly the windows, I agree with the fact if trying to repair these windows in fact, is perhaps inviting more damage to the historical integrity of the property rather than less. So I'd also be in favor, but I think that's kind of beside the point that we need to address right now, which is what do we
Yeah.
do? We do a
Well, no, but I agree. I think though, if we did a continuance, I think that they could come back with some more,
Right.
specified ideas about how they would maintain that integrity at the same time, using more modern materials and the driveway cut and the other issue,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Right.
think so.
And
So
That's
I
right.
think if we, sorry, I wrote a list of things here that I think if we did do the continuance, it would give them an opportunity to address the laundry room, the driveway, potentially the outside dining area, maybe in discussion with the neighbors. If they would address the window design to be approved by the historic architect, and whatever we're doing on the siding, I think I have a question mark on that. And we would actually, I guess we could write in that they have agreed to replace the trees at the back. I think the 6 or so trees at the back. And then get the architect's review of the railings, post and trellis treatment. All those could be addressed by the next meeting, hopefully.
And that pump house really, or the pool equipment house is in an awkward spot, I think. I would like to see if they can find a better place for that.
Mhm.
Okay, so these are all sort of modifications to the existing plan as opposed to some kind of a full redesign. So and the applicants, Mr. and Mrs. Hoop Cooper and Mr. Wilkinson are still on the call, so I think they're hearing all of this, and they can also work with Christian to work out a checklist of what they've heard tonight. I should just for the purposes of our procedural integrity, tell the applicant that they could ask us if they so wish to deny the project without prejudice, which would allow them to appeal to the city council. So I think I know the answer, but I do have to leave them that option.
Can I make one last address about historic preservation? You can only do so much before you don't have a historic home anymore. And the program does adopt the Secretary of the Interior Standards, which recommends the preservation of historic materials to the greatest extent and their repair, not their replacement. So as a historic architect or a historic planner, I would have to disagree that replacing the siding with new materials is a non-issue. It's a huge issue. And the more you take this house apart, the more we don't have a historic residence. And then we can't make the proper findings and we can't comply with CEQA, which requires we protect this and make the finding that the home meets the Secretary of the Interior standards in order for it to be exempt.
But
So
that's why really the siding has to stay in place. You can't remove the siding.
That's
and
why I agree with
hope
that,
that you
Jim.
don't damage it. It just needs to be waterproof from the inside and shear walled from the inside.
I really don't think the property owners want to go through CEQA and because of the loss of the resource. That would really delay things. So.
I hear you. And that's why I deferred to Brock about the feasibility of actually keeping the siding by working for the inside. The windows are a different issue, though. Okay, so before we move on to a motion, could I ask the applicant whether or not they would prefer that we deny the project without prejudice to allow them to appeal the city council, or would they prefer a continuance as we're proposing? You're on mute, Mr. Wilkinson.
Well, I haven't had a chance to discuss this with the Hout Coopers, but I think a continuance would be our choice, our preference. And even though I do feel like we could address most of these issues without a continuance, if if the resolution were properly crafted, but we're willing to take the continuance and come back with some revisions as discussed here. But can I just clarify one thing? Kristen keeps bringing up the siding as replacement. That is not what we're proposing. We're proposing reusing the siding. Removing it just gives us the opportunity to do other things. And I would argue that it can be removed. Maybe not every piece is going to be saved, but given the amount of siding we have to reuse, I think there's no question we can reuse, have enough to reuse it and cover the entire north elevation. So there's a distinction there that needs to be made about the siding.
Okay, well, you know, I suppose that once you come back to the commission with the other changes, we can address that and come to a conclusion as to what we want to do at that point. But my understanding is that a continuance would be preferable to you and to Mr. and Mrs. Cooper as opposed to a denial.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I think we can move on to a motion. Which this was not hard. So if somebody would like to propose one.
We have to mention all the items in the
No, we're just
No.
You don't. You just talk about the continuance.
Yeah.
Sorry, then, Brock. You go ahead. You
I would
started.
move that we continue item 2138 47 Madrone Avenue to a meeting.
It's either a date uncertain or would have to be the second meeting of June is the earliest, because I already have 2 items on June 14th.
Let's do the second meeting of June.
Yeah, Could I get a second?
I'll second.
Second. Oh,
Okay,
That'll
all
be
in
the 28th.
favor?
aye.
Aye. And maybe on this one we should take the roll.
Yeah.
Uh,
Roll
Oh, I'm
call.
sorry. I was writing.
I think on this one we probably want to take the roll.
Yes, I'll call it out. Commissioner Kunstler,
Aye.
Commissioner Chalmers,
Aye.
Commissioner Swisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Tauber,
Aye.
Commissioner Wagstaff.
Aye.
Okay, so we are continued to the second meeting in June. Thank you to all who have attended this evening as well on this matter. Thank you for your interest. We really appreciate your participation. And with that, we can move on to our next agenda item. All I have to do is find the agenda. Here it is. Actually, we're moving on to business items. And the first one is a review of the city's capital improvement program for 22-23. And could we have the staff report, which I gather is going to be from Elise?
Yes, the city annually reviews the capital improvement plan, which is a 5-year plan. And the state law requires the planning commission to consider whether or not the capital improvement plan is consistent with the city's general plan. And staff has reviewed the last 2 years of capital improvements against the 1990 general plan and finds that the programs are consistent with the general plan. And we're recommending that you find the 2022, 2023 through 2026 to 2027 capital improvement plan in conformance with the general plan. And that concludes my report, unless you have any questions for me.
Okay, does anyone have any questions about for Elise about what she said this evening or what you've read in her report? Personally, I thought it made quite a bit of sense. I don't think we need any kind of a resolution or a motion on this. Is that correct, Kristen?
Can we make a recommendation to city council?
Yeah, that would be helpful to have, so we could let them know that you you did come to the same conclusion as what we're recommending in the staff report.
Oh, okay. So, Laura, could you make that motion?
Sure. I'd like to move that we recommend to City Council acceptance of the updated capital improvement program for fiscal years 2022-23 through 2026-27.
I get a second on that.
I'll
Second.
second.
Okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
And none opposed, and all are present this evening. I don't think we need a roll call on that one. Okay, we can move on to approval of the minutes from April 26th. Could I get a motion on that?
I'll move approval of the minutes from April 26th.
Get a second.
I'll second it.
And everybody was present, I believe. So all in favor, please.
Aye.
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 All opposed? None. And that recommendation is adopted. And are there any commissioner reports? Oh, yeah, any commissioner reports this evening? Okay, hearing none.
I have a quick question, really quick, and I know it's just so late. I know there's going to be 2 vacancies on the commission. So, I mean, should we as a commission actively go out there and find people that we think would be a good fit? Or is that not?
It would be very helpful if you could recruit people. We did receive 1 application, and I've been sending emails out to try to encourage people to apply as well. But we need more applications. And so if we don't get applications to be considered at the first June City Council meeting, then we may have issues getting quorums for the Planning Commission meetings, unless those of you that are leaving stay on, or everyone else is sure to attend every single meeting. So if you could reach out to friends and people you know that might be interested, they do not have to be design professionals, although it's very useful to have design professionals on the commission. But that would be great. So please do spread the word.
Yeah.
And then how does that work with in terms of like, so then do they go before the city council as a recommended person by a certain planning commissioner? Is that what happens? Or it's just anonymous? It's just like they go in and
they would apply, the application's public record, and then the council would interview them and select someone.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then is there a link to where they apply?
Yes, it's on the it's on the city website. And it has been up on the homepage right at cityoflarkspur.org. Let me see if it's still there.
You know, I guess I went to have a look at it and didn't find it straight
So
away.
if there's a section for news flash under the pictures,
and
here it is. It's the first link.
Yeah, I see it.
I think I know somebody who's going to apply.
Great.
Laura, when are you, are you the same time as Daniel?
June 30th.
June 30th? And you too, Daniel?
Yep.
Yeah, we're gonna miss you guys.
That's when my term's up.
Yeah.
We both start at the same time.
I gotta check and see when my term's up.
It's a while. Yeah, don't get any ideas.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I walk down the bike path with my dog and buttonhole people. That's how I got Jeff to join. I just sort of on the bike path and said, "You."
That works.
True. That's true. It worked.
I've been conversing with Monty Deegan. I'm like recruiting him to come back to us.
Good luck with that.
I know.
Okay, so final thing would be adjournment.
All right.
Would someone care to?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll
Since it's
second.
past midnight here in Washington.
Aye.
Yeah, really.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And there are none opposed.
All right.
So thanks everybody. That was a tough one.
That's a tough meeting. Hey, Brock, did you have a real question about your knee, or were you being silly?
No, I'm actually, I want to set up an appointment with Dr. Louie to talk about, he's mentioned something about going in and removing scar tissue.
Yeah, it's you can do that.